Welcome back. So today we are messing around a little bit more with the drums. So in the future I will do the drums again. In this whole section what we're doing is we're using MIDI drums and Easy Drummer. And what we're trying to do is get the most out of that. So this is not a live recorded drum kit. So I'm going to show you a few tricks to implement with Easy Drummer to make it sound better. And what I mean by that is Easy Drummer sounds really great by itself. I will link to the other videos that I've done around Easy Drummer and what you can do to make it sound better and use that as a additional kind of resource. Where Easy Drummer falls, and all of these fall flat, is that they have a roboticness to it. All the hits are all the same. They're usually too much to the grid. If you program them, they're very, very robotic. These were MIDI loops that were recorded by Real Drum. If you go to Easy Drummer to Tune Track, you will find that you can buy all these kind of drum loops and stuff. And they sound great because they were played by real people. But then all the other problems that MIDI drums create are still there. It's always plays back the same sample, if it's always on the same volume, etc., 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 etc. You didn't have a real drummer playing, you didn't have somebody in the room, you just don't have that interaction with the bass and the musicianship that happens when people play together. And that is why there is such an issue with using MIDI drums, or a lot of people hate it, which I agree with. So what we're trying to do here is, okay, you can argue you're forced to use it, so how do we get the most out of it? So there really is a lot of things that you can do, and I will see how many I can do about using MIDI drums and trying to get them as best as possible. One of the main things that I've noticed is that they sound absolutely fantastic by itself, but once they're in a mix they kind of start falling short. So one of the things that I do is I go into each and every one of these. This might be a longer video, but I think it's very important. So when you use MIDI drums and use these kind of recorded drum loops, they are great, especially if most of them have been done by really good drummers. However, they didn't play to your song, they didn't play to your riff, they didn't do anything like that. So they don't know where the accents are, they don't know where all these little things are that kind of make them unique. Okay, it doesn't mean you can't try and get there as much as possible, because you can edit the MIDI file. So if I go into the MIDI file here, I can see the hits. So I can see that because they're different colors, and on the bottom here you'll see that this is all different velocities that the drums have been hit. So I can play with them. Oops, put that off. So if you look closely, you'll see that they aren't that heavily to the grid aligned, and that's because it was played by a real drummer. But I can go in here and I can say, well, you know what, actually I want a little lag here before the next drum hits. There's a little bit of a hang on a guitar solo, and I want the bass and the snare to come in just a tad of a second later. So why be scared? Take them and move them. You know what I mean? Now in this case I'm not, because I've kind of already done most of it, and you've got to do that for feeling, and you literally do that by looking at it, playing through it. So for example there could be a slightly faster hit. So we could realistically move these. See that it's on the dot. Now this is not in time with the bass, but you kind of have to play around with it. So my process, and I've done this in the previous video, is when I'm trying to write a song, I mess around a lot before I'm happy with the drums, because I want them to feel as natural as possible. It means you choose the kind of right drum beats that you want, you play your riff to it, you play your riff to the feeling that you want from the riff, then you might have to go back into the MIDI file and slightly move timings around. Also accents, so in the riff you might want the snare to be hit slightly harder on certain parts of the riff than others, and then you can do that because you just listen to it and choose it. So this is a bass drum. We can have another snare hit there. So you can do a lot to kind of, dare I say, personalize it. But I think the main aim is just to make the MIDI drums, which are kind of fairly box standard, fit in more with the theme of the song and the riff and where the accents are and where there's this little slight delay or a lag or a little bit of personalization. I think it goes a long way. Another thing is that the cymbals tend to be too heavily hit, so they're like really loud, and because they are all hit at such a high level, they start becoming that ringing and roboticness, and it's not nice at all. So play with the volume, the velocity that they are hit, and that also helps you to go, well, he's hitting the let's say the right, so you can start putting in these little things that will personalize it a bit more. It's a lot of effort, but it goes a long way. Most of that's done in this already. Now again, when it comes to like really fast thrash metal and punk stuff, it's kind of like the drummer tends to play as hard and as heavy and as loud as possible. So you kind of have to keep to a certain velocity and not deviate too much. And the reason is, so what happens with drum samples is that the good drum samples like Addictive Drums and Easy Drummer and Stephen Slate and all these kind of things, the sample that is played back is not just played back louder or lighter. They hit the drums at different velocities and record all them, because a drum responds differently to being hit softly to loudly. So it's really important to play with the velocities, because that really gives you a lot more dynamics within your drums, MIDI drum playback. And you get them all to be roughly the same volume through compression, and that happens in real life too. Compression, people always complain something is over compressed, and that is obviously true, but actually compression helps keep dynamics, because in a mix, if I hit the drum too softly and I don't compress to compensate for that difference in volume, that drum disappears out of the mix, because we perceive what the loudness, not just through volume, but actually what the drum sounds like. We know roughly what a snare sounds like if it's being hit softly or if it's been bashed to hell. We pick that up. The energy that is released, we pick that up through the audio. So it's not just about volume, it is about what does it sound like, right? The tonality, the timbre that comes off it. So compression is a really important aspect of actually keeping dynamics. If you overdo it, you destroy dynamics, but it's really important to keep dynamics. And you can obviously implement this here. You can play things back at a lower volume because maybe it's a build up, etc., etc. So put the snares down, let them build up, and use clever compression to bring them all to an audible level and fit properly in the mix. So I'm not going to go into too much mess around with this because I've already done most of it, so I'll probably just ruin more than I fix. So the other problem with Easy Drummer and all of these is that it's kind of seen as, okay, it's a standalone thing. You put Easy Drummer in, choose your drum kit, it's got all these kind of basic compressions and tape emulations and all that kind of stuff, and reverbs included, so it sounds great. But it doesn't, because the moment it's in the mix, it doesn't work properly. One of the reasons is you compress a bass drum different from a snare drum, different from toms, different from overheads. So it is very basic. What we're going to do today is actually split up. The other thing is that in Easy Drummer, you don't have in all the drum kits the possibility to blend the mic that's in front of the bass drum kit as well as the one on the back, or blend the top and bottom mics of the toms or the snares. So you don't have as much mixing controls that you would normally have if you recorded them in real life and fully mic'd up. but we can get close to it by realizing where the shortfalls are and actually compensating for it. One of the things you can do is we can split up all the overheads and the room mics from the main drum kit, so that the tom, snares and bass drum, and that's really easy to do. So if I click on Easy Drummer here, I can see that in the mixer I've got all my drums playing back. Okay, that's the one. So I've already duplicated my drum tracks. Then I've got another Easy Drummer playing back, and these two, all they're doing is they're actually playing back slightly different drums. So I've got a nice open drum, bass drum here, but on this one I've got a more clickety one. So it's kind of like incorporating the beater mic and the front mic. So we can do these things. It's really important that if you play two kits alongside one another, that all the cymbals and all basically all the elements of the drum kits are different. Because if you play, for example, this, if they call up exactly the same sample and play it back, you will get phase issues. So they have to all be different. So in this case, this actually works really well. It just happened to work really well. I think for the type of song this works out quite well. But let me quickly show you what I tend to do most of the time. So now we've got three. Gonna duplicate again. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna switch these off. Just gonna mute them for now. These are all, oh wait a minute, they're not rooted yet. I've got a drum buzz, but I've not rooted them yet. Let me root them quickly to the what's going on here? Drum aux. Okay. So again, I'm going to send them all to a drum aux, and you should always do that because you'll see later on that it helps a lot. So again, I've got no master sends on the separate tracks. They're all going through the drum aux, the drum bus. So let's take this off for now. Let's play back just the one. Okay, why is that not playing? What have I done wrong? Oh,
it wasn't working out with what I believed. Time to search for another dream. Fix the
see, overall, it sounds fine. I can now go into the mixer and say, okay, the overheads are like this, like that, no bother, but actually, in the mix, if I push this up, the overheads will be too much.
It wasn't working out with what I believed.
So what I'm going to do is very quick. I'm going to take the mixer. I'm going to leave the kick, snare and toms. I'm going to switch everything else off. So if I now play it back just this. So as you can hear, all I have now is my my drums itself, no overheads at all. In this one, I do the opposite. I mute these and keep my overheads. Okay, and now I can actually use separate things to actually compress it, which are much better for it. So let's use, let's start with compression. Compress them quite heavily. Use a drum bus. So the dry mix is basically how much of the affected signal is coming through compared to the original. So I can play with that because it's really over compressed at the moment. Cool with that. Then what we'll do is we'll do the usual trick with cymbals, overheads. We'll take the EQ. Now if you look what happens here, this is a typical curve. I don't like this high end. I always take that down a wee bit. Okay. So you've got a bit more control now over the compression ratios of the different elements. So now this is very different from the drum sound I had before. So I need to be a little bit more careful. See what the EQ says. It also means that remember what I said about the bass guitar. In the bass guitar, I have got the 50 all the way down, so here I can now bring it up because I want that to be nice and heavy. So purely for demonstration purposes, I did not actually prefer the previous thing I've done. So we have basically, I'm not going to use what I just showed you, but it is a very effective way. It gives you more control. You can even go further. You can literally have like a lot more drum tracks, and then what you do is you literally separate each item, and so you have complete compression, EQ control and reverb control over every item, the bass drum, the snare drum, everything. But I would do that right at the end when you know that you're happy with your MIDI loops. So I actually like this way this is going. Let's just have another listen. So now we're starting to test how are things fitting together. So the bass and drums are fitting in nicely. So again, I'm doing this on headphones, so I'm not 100% sure how this is going to sound, but what I'll probably end up doing is, once this is all finished, these videos I'll probably do a lot more with just do final tweaks with the proper monitors, and then have a final kind of video, say what changed, what's different. So that is that for the drums for now. Thank you very much.